ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to BoxCon Global, wherever you're at, tuned around the world. We've got some incredible guests from all around the world to talk about something that is on the forefront of all of our minds at the moment. And we're going to look at how beatboxing is going to attempt or offer space to contribute to some of these ideas. My name is Dan Su. I'm from the UK. I am one of the co-producers of the UK Beatbox Championships, one of the co-producers of the Mexico Beatbox Championships. We run a stage at Glastonbury Festival called the Rumshack, which has been platforming beatbox in the biggest festival in the world. And I run an organization called Lyrics Organics. I am going to be your host for the next kind of hour and a half or so. It is going to be a really interesting chat. I'm very excited to introduce the artists that surround me at the moment. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves one by one. So guys and girls, I'm going to ask you 3 questions. Who are you? Where are you? And how would someone else describe the work that you do? Okay, so who are you, where are you, and how would someone else describe the work that you do? Because normally when I ask artists these questions, they're a little bit too afraid to give them full picture of how amazing they are. So how would someone else describe how great you are? And would anyone like to kick us off?
All right, I'm invisible, so
right.
I'm gonna kick it off. So my name is D.Cross. Here in Brooklyn, New York, and anybody describing just the work I do, I would say just creatively connective.
Nice. Thank you very much, D.Cross. Welcome to the conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Cool. My name is Zaini. I'm from London, UK, and I guess the way people could describe my work is not fully found the true potential of what it should be, but still remaining at its essence, you know?
Thank you very much, Zaini. Welcome.
Big up, man.
Who would like to go next? Zaini, if you select who goes next. Okay,
Arabelle,
Airloom, over to you.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Arabelle, aka Airloom Beats. I am in Brooklyn, New York. And if somebody were to describe the work that I do, they would say that it is heavily rooted in education and, building a culture of understanding and love.
Thank you. Would you like to tag someone in?
Oh, I'm gonna tag Chesney in.
Thank you, Arabelle. My name is Chesney Snow. I'm the co-founder of the American Beatbox Championships, and I produced that event for a number of years. I'm a poet. At my heart, I'm a theater artist, beatboxer, educator. In the beatbox community for quite a number of years. And I guess if I was to say, someone were to describe what I do, it's like I use the arts as a vehicle for healing, communal transformation, basically the core of what I do with my life. And I'm going to tag, I'm going to tag Johnny Buffalo. Yeah. Johnny. Okay, so.
Hello.
Oh, no.
Sure, I can take over until Johnny gets back. Is he here?
Hear me, guys? Sorry, hello. Is this better?
Yep. Hey, Johnny.
Yeah, over to you, Johnny.
Oh, my apologies. Loving the technical difficulties. Yo, what's up, everybody? My name is Johnny Buffalo. I am coming to you also from Brooklyn, New York. Just a couple stops away from Arabelle, actually. And I have been, let's see, a little bit about the work I do. I moved to New York City about 8 years ago and was involved in nonprofit organizations such as the Hip Hop Reeducation Project and Urban Art Beat, and have been involved in the hip hop community in New York City since I've moved here and have learned an incredible amount. I also for the past 3 years have been a full-time member of an a cappella group, Backtrack Vocals, and have been doing a lot of educational work with them, and also outside of a cappella with just beatboxing as well. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Johnny. And over back to you, Galush.
Sure. My name is John Galusha. My stage name is Galush, and I'm from Middlebury, Connecticut, which is just a little north of the city. So I'm a little more removed in a more rural area than Arabelle and Johnny are. But someone describing my work would probably focus a lot on my work in academia. I focus a lot on bringing these issues to the attention of the overarching academic world to kind of push into that field a art form and voices that are not normally seen there. And I think that it's very important to me to balance and to amplify the voices of educators and artists and beatboxers from around the world and the issues that are uniquely present in our community, particularly into the world of higher education, academia, and writing.
Nice one. Thank you very much, Galush, and welcome.
Thank
And
you.
last but not least,
hello guys. So my name is Scratchy, and I guess if someone were to describe what I do a lot of activist work. I help kids empower their voices, occupy spaces of expressions. So by organizing events, by organizing workshops. I also tour in Europe with an amazing singer, Alani. Do workshops across France with an amazing truck called the Scratch Van. And I've also founded this association called Panam Beatbox Hustlers in Paris. And we try to bridge social justice, arts, health, and science through documentaries, film projections. And yeah, that's about it.
amazing. Thank you, Scratchy, and thank you one and all for joining us. So this is a BoxCon Global talk on diversity and beatboxing. And as you can tell, we have some incredible change makers who also happen to be beatboxers. And this is the important thing that we're looking at today, is social change and social action, and how we can use our talents collectively and individually as a vehicle for change. Now, over the next hour and a half or so, we're going to be looking at beatbox. We're going to be exploring the global scene. We're going to be touching on some of the origins and the evolution. But ultimately, what we're doing is looking at diversity through the we're looking at social action through the prism of race and diversity. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to, so just a bit of kind of the framework for how we're going to roll for the next, I want to try and keep things as succinct and direct as possible. There's going to be huge conversations to unpack, and my role is just to kind of keep it moving. But I want to make sure that this is a safe space for all of you to be as expressive and as powerful as you are in offline, and we're kind of bringing that online. But really, the role of this conversation is to build this conversation in a way which is constructive, and hopefully by the end of this session, it's not just about a talk and a debate, but actually, hopefully we have some action points and we have a strategic approach that we are fueling and beginning from BoxCon Global and spreading that outwards. So I just kind of wanted all of my guests to bear that in mind. What tangible, structural, constructive things can we do with our roles of influence? Also, just a quick message, which is to all the guests, just to, if you want to say something, if you don't mind just putting your hands up, if you're able to, so I can just You only have to put it up for a few seconds, and then I'll see you, and then I'll be able to jump in
Yep.
the conversation on your behalf. Okay, so are we all good?
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so we're going to kick this off as we always would do as beatboxers. So 3, 2, 1, beatbox. Right, we're going to get into this. And I wanted to acknowledge the people who aren't necessarily beatboxers who have tuned in from all around the world, as well as the original heads up in here, and talk a little bit about the history of the word beatboxing. So what is it about beatboxing? Why have people tried to segregate the word beatboxing from other forms of mouth music? And we're just going to use this as a launch pad to get to our final goal. So why do people try to segregate beatboxing from other forms of mouth music?
Oh, Chesney, you want to stay?
Well, I think that, if you look at the cultures of Black music traditionally in America, it's basically just follows the tradition, what the dominant culture has done with Black culture, and Black music, whether you're talking about, jazz or rock or blues or pop. I think beatboxing certainly has it's just kind of it's what is going to happen when in that ecosystem, right? It's not like beatboxing is going to be unique or separate from these other art forms that kind of out of conditions of struggle, right? We have to think about where beatboxing as we know it came from. I don't want to get into a super history lesson, but just to kind of sum it up, D.Cross can, I think, speak to this too. Galush, you did a really wonderful article or research about this, which I'm sure you're going to speak to. But, essentially, pop culture was born out of these systems of oppression that took away instruments, that took away the ability for young people to have spaces to be able to express themselves, and I think that when it was when you really look at it, it's like the system really has always tried to co-opt the power of the creative forces of oppressed people, because they realize how they're smart. They understand the dangers of it. This is why, and when I mean dangers, is like when you give a song or a sound, it can spark an incredible movement. So people like Nina Simone and Harry Belafonte and all of these great artists of that era and that movement, the civil rights era, there was a reason that they were blacklisted. There was a reason that the system tried to come down on them, similar to what happened with Colin Kaepernick. The system came down on Colin Kaepernick because the powers that be knew what the forces are. They knew why so much money in sports, right? Why is it? Yeah, it's great, right? We love sport, but people love sports. But they understand it's kind of like the games, the Coliseum. They understand how this affects the minds of the people. And so that message of Colin Kaepernick, right? What he was giving was so powerful that they had to crush it. So I know that I kind of went off from beatboxing all the way to protest movements and popular culture, but yeah, I would say that it is about control. It is about fear. That's why I pause when I hear people saying, "Well, we want to rename beatboxing." Why? Like beatboxing. From a lot of the stories that I heard, and I talked to Buff's family when I was doing the research for my film American Beatboxer, and you start to see what beatboxing was born out of. It was born out of the bottom. And that is the thing, at least in America, that they're always trying to erase. They're always trying to suppress. I'll pass.
Thank you, Chesney. I'll be interested to hear
I
from
want
you,
to
Galush, because
I
you.
want to add
So,
to that.
sorry, D.Cross, over to
I'm
you.
sorry. I want to add to that because one of the things with beatboxing, I mean.
Oh no, D.
Come back to us, D.Cross.
D.
Beatboxing is, we now call it. Originally it was known as just human beatboxing, just
No.
the fact that you were indeed a living instrument, and it was coming from a point of say, hey, look, I'm gonna take something and make it into a bigger thing while taking just nothing. And one of the things that happened with human beatboxing, the art form, as different elements and different parts of hip hop culture became more commercial and more popular, that element, with the exception of a few people, was pretty much buried and made to seem irrelevant unless you were maybe a handful of people. So it's important to really look at just the historical context of human beatboxing, its connection to being part of hip hop, because one of the reasons why a lot of the naming, the renaming, and all of that is because what happened is the roots of hip hop kind of abandoned human beatboxing as an art form. So there were just very few people that were sort of carrying on that tradition, and other people that were ignoring the tradition and downplaying it. So when it reemerged, when the internet happened and it reemerged and people were able to see specifically, I'll pinpoint once Rozelle got a chance to tour with the Roots, it sparked a whole new resurgence worldwide. Where here as in the States, one of the things that was happening is there was a handful of people. I was always attracted to this art form because it's something that I grew up as a child watching Buffy, and meeting Buffy as a child, with the Fat Boys, and being inspired, and then later on meeting Doug and working with him. And it was something that stayed with me because it was like, hey, look, people are forgetting about this. And I took it upon myself to say, you know what, I'm not going to let people forget about this, and incorporate it. So I took it upon myself to say, okay, let me incorporate it in. If I'm writing rhymes, incorporate it. If I'm going to do poems, I'm going to incorporate it. And I got clowned for it. But it's about now recognizing the past and also recognizing the evolution of it now, and seeing how it's bringing people together throughout the world. And that's important.
That is important. That's precisely where we're going. I'll be interested to hear your take, Galush, because as we've touched upon, you've done a research project on the a cappella community. Is that correct?
Yeah, certainly. And I can talk a little bit about that briefly.
Yeah, please. So what is how do you see beatbox in the context of the a cappella ecosystem?
Well, primarily what I'm looking at is the origins of this concept of vocal percussion, which is a term that in the a cappella scene is largely interchangeable and ambiguously related to beatboxing. And what I did was I went back and I did a lot of research, and I spoke with a man named D. Sharon. He's a guy who coined the term vocal percussion for its use in a cappella, and really led, really kind of spearheaded the culture that sort of developed into what we would say is contemporary a cappella music. And importantly, this culture is really rooted in the collegiate, in the American collegiate world, and all of the whiteness and kind of privilege and elitism that goes along with that. So what I was looking into was how it was. I was particularly inspired by Spider Horse, who won the World Beatbox Championships, and then shortly afterwards won the International Acapella Open Finals. It's this enormous acapella championship. So I was kind of wondering how it was that we got to this place of two men of color winning an enormous acapella championship as two beatboxers who are really coming out of the hip hop tradition. So when we look at this trajectory of vocal percussion and acapella music and its relationship with beatboxing, what I found was very much that the development of vocal percussion as a concept came out of this history of beatboxing, and in the 80s and in the media heyday, you could say, of old school beatboxing, there was a push in the acapella world to appropriate that structure, that style of performance, that sort of vocal percussion, using the umbrella term of vocal percussion, and they appropriated it in order to expand a new repertoire of music. They're able to use beatboxing and the techniques with that to take on an entire new repertoire of music and identity as a music entity. There's an entire push to distance a cappella music from associating itself with a certain genre. It's called a style of instrumentation as opposed to a genre because it is able to use beatboxing to take on any genre. People can perform rock songs or hip hop songs or more classical pieces in the a cappella world without having any real root to the genre that they're doing. And what that does is that it exnominates the position of whiteness inherent in that system. A cappella music is built out of collegiate elitism, and it erases the history of beatboxing that it is very much dependent on in order to have the kinds of wide mass success that it has had. To see so many young beatboxers coming into the scene through the avenue of a cappella music, they're being exposed to stuff like the Pitch Perfect movies and the Sing Off and Pentatonics and those more high profile a cappella institutions. We're seeing a lot of young beatboxers coming in through that. I think it's a very quick way for a dominantly historically white system to erase the history of hip hop inherent in their music. And the only real antidote to that is to talk about it and to point it out and to force the higher education world, to force the academics, to force the white people to engage with the history that they're overrunning. And that has to happen through education and through advocacy and speaking at the necessary places to really get this history looked at and remembered, because it's very easily being run over.
Thank you.
It's a really interesting perspective. Thank you for sharing that. I think the what you talk about collegiate elitism within the a cappella world is really interesting, especially when we think about the current cohort of beatboxers. And I wanted to ask everyone, and just to round the circle a little bit, are we seeing enough people of color in the beatbox community at the moment? What is your perspectives from your respective countries?
I would like
Airloom.
to speak on this. I say no. We don't see enough people of color. I'm really excited to see Chesney right now, and obviously, like living in New York, I get to experience a lot of diversity and meet many beatboxers of color. But I tell you, like whenever I see a beatboxer, like a black beatboxer at an event, I get like super hype. Like you can ask DCB or Coldness. I'm always like, what? Like I get like super, super hype because I don't see them a lot. And I get really lonely. Chesney he started the scene, but I guess like by the time that I entered the scene, he had already left. And my mentor, Kid Lucky, is a black person as well. And I mean, like, he already knew what I was stepping into, and he took the time to educate me and let me know what I was walking into. But in many situations, I feel very uncomfortable in beatbox events because it's very uncomfortable being like one of the only few people of color and also one of the only few women in the room. I feel like, ooh, like it's very, very daunting being in a room full of a whole bunch of men, let alone a whole bunch of white men. Okay. So yeah, whenever I see another beatboxer of color, I get like super excited and I want to know what their experiences are. And I want to know where they've been. I'm like, why aren't you here with me? Because I wouldn't be feeling so lonely if you would show up. But I think that the longer that I stay in the scene and the more experiences I have, I realize why Black people don't want to be in this scene. And I would like to share a story if you guys have the time, because I think that within this story, there is a lot that can be unpacked and a lot that can be discerned about the health of this community and how they approach, you know, maybe people with differences. I also want to say that like sometimes it's hard for me to even understand why I'm being excluded. I'm like, is it because I'm a woman? Is it because I'm Black? Or is it because I'm just me and you don't like my personality? Like, I don't know. Is it because I'm just new? Is it because you're attracted to me and you don't like know how to talk to me? I don't know. But many times I can be in this room and I can feel like I'm literally invisible. I would be in a cipher with people. Somebody comes, enters the cipher, shakes everybody's hand. As soon as they get to me, it's like, whoop, don't shake my hand. I could be in a cipher and then somebody would just step in front of me in the cipher and completely cut me off from literally the culture that I'm trying to connect to. That's not even the story. I was at an event, a very prominent beatboxing event. And I'm feeling insecure already. I gave you that context, but I'm like, okay, you know what? Maybe I need to be brave. Maybe it's me. Maybe I need to be the one that's reaching out. So I go and I reach out to a beatboxer who I've met a couple times, is a prominent beatboxer. I'm not going to name names right now, but I go and I'm trying to connect like, hey, beatbox with me. Could you teach me something? He's already like, out of nowhere, another beatboxer grabs me by the arm and starts calling me the N-word to my face, right? He actually overpowers me so that he drags me out of the place that I was supposed to be in. The beatboxer that I was talking to, he was just like, whoop, that's my cue, bye. Like, gone. It was like he was relieved that he didn't have to continue talking to me. Meanwhile, somebody that I do not know is grabbing me by the arm and yelling racial slurs in my face at point blank range. We were also in front of a hostel. I have to say that there were many witnesses to this, many, at least 20. You know how beatboxers are at beatbox events. We all like to be outside ciphering and partying. There were many beatboxers witnessing this. So anyway, I'm talking to this beatboxer like, could you let me go and can you stop yelling racial slurs in my face? He continues, I can say whatever I want because I'm a person of color too. And I'm like, you don't know me. You don't know that I'm not the type of Black person that likes the N-word, right? That's a whole other issue, even within the Black community. That is a very hotly contested issue. You should not just assume that all Black people are feeling like brotherly with the N-word. To me, if you use that word to me, you basically just called me a slave. And now you're out here overpowering me in front of a whole bunch of men that I'm already uncomfortable with. And I'm like, let go of me, let go of me. He's not listening. I turn out to the people like, could somebody intervene? Because obviously I'm not strong enough. This drunk dude is not listening to me. I think my friend tries to help, but she's little like me. So we're both like hanging off of this dude's arm, like, let me go. I'm looking at you guys like, please, somebody come in. Why does it have to get to the point where I have to be on the brink of pleading for somebody to intervene? I don't even know that beatboxer's name. That's the impression that he left on me, though. Whenever I see his face, I'm thinking that's the dude that grabbed me and yelled a whole bunch of racial slurs in my face while everybody else in this community watched. Eventually, his tag team partner was able to pry his hands off of my face, off of my arm, and like get him away. And then after that, people were just sort of looking at me like, dang, like she's mad. And then again, it was another reason not to talk to me. Nobody came up to me like, are you okay? I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. Let's beatbox. Because the only reason that I'm here is because I like to beatbox like you guys, right? Like, I'm not here to like fight with people. I want to make music and have fun in ciphers. Ciphers are my happy place. But when I experience something like that, and when I see the community allow something like that to happen, I don't feel welcome and I do not feel safe.
Do you still feel that lack of safe space when you enter beatbox events?
Well, when I come to the New York beatbox events, because I'm centered out here, those are actually my brothers. I understand there's always like a little bit of awkwardness, and I'm not gonna sit here and act like I act perfect either. I'm awkward too, but like here in my New York community, I would say for the most part they are inclusive. There are a few members that feel that they can just like throw around the N-word casually, like it doesn't mean anything, and that there isn't weight behind that word, and they don't see how disrespectful it is. And like they might use the excuse that Black people use that word together. But again, like I said, that's a Black people issue, and I don't feel that other people should weigh in on that until Black people figure that out. But like I said, you should not assume that Black people are like friendly with you to that word, And I think like at the very least, if you learn something from this discussion, understand that the N-word is off limits. It's canceled. Black people, we tried to reappropriate the word because there's a lot of pain behind that word, and we tried to take our power back. And now that we take our power back, like people want to sort of like be there with us. It's like, no. Anyway, like I said, I'm not the type of person to use that word. I don't think that any of my friends that know me, any of my Black friends will never refer to me that way. And I don't know what anybody would think coming up to my face and doing that. And yes, this was a beatboxer doing that to my face. Now it makes me wonder what you do when I'm not around.
Well, thank you for sharing that harrowing story. I'm sorry you've had to go through that, but I think it's important that you've called that out, and I really appreciate that. Scratchy, I'd be interested to hear about your take about people of color, or specifically beatboxers of color in the community in France. How is the community there?
Yeah, thanks for sharing for letting me speak, and also for Arbel. I'm really sorry about all this. I think I've been around some of the experiences that she's had, because I go to events since 2015, more or less, and we're definitely a minority. And I think Arabelle is probably the first Black woman I've ever seen in events. So so there's a lot of work for everyone else, like to do the work. So basically, first on history points, because of the roots of beatbox, like understanding where it comes from, why I actually emerged. If I have to speak for myself, there's I come from the Caribbean, so Guadeloupe, it's an island. So beatboxing was actually a tool used to communicate between slaves, and it was used to connect with the African traditions. So it expands like with the soul. It connects with the soul. So now to see it used, it has grown like tremendously across the globe, and I'm super happy. But I just feel that sometime I would love to see it connected to its history as well, like so that it's not forgotten. But yeah, most definitely I can say that we don't see a lot of representation of color on the stage, and that's, even for me, it's something that I have to learn. As I go along the evolution of the beatbox scene, I understand the importance of my presence or my voice as a representative, and also like the way, the place, and the people that we meet at events, core understanding of what we're talking when we speak about music. Mostly, it would be people who went to music schools. Um, People from the suburbs, we don't really see them at events either because it takes a lot of money to go to events. Um, what else? Like if you have to travel, same stuff. Um, it's funny because I went to a neighborhood wants to do a workshop, and one kid, it was really quick to raise his hand and was like, "Okay, excuse me, sir, how much money does the world champ win?" You know, I was like, it's a fair point. I mean, like I come to the suburbs, give a workshop, and for them, it's a totally different reality, you know. And I guess like they totally direct their focus on profitable endeavors such as rap and whatever else. You know, that's what I would say.
Thank you. Johnny, I'd like to bring you into the conversation. How are you doing?
Doing well, thanks. Yeah, sorry, got my video working again.
That's good to see you. Do you have any perspective? Where are you based again?
So I am in Brooklyn as well.
And so, can I ask you what your origins are?
Yes, absolutely. So I mean, I'm white. I'm Italian. I'm from Buffalo, New York originally, hence Johnny Buffalo. So I grew up in Buffalo. You know, not New York City as far as the size of a city, but it is the second biggest city in the state. You know, and I grew up in the city. I was exposed to black friends. I had black friends growing up, for sure. And I moved to New York. In I moved here in 2012. I graduated college in 2012, and I went to Fredonia with Chris Solis, Spider Horse. You know, the dude. He's the reason that I'm here. He shared beatboxing with me, and also, honestly, I don't know if it's ever been said, but that man is the reason that the American beatboxing scene exists globally. Like, he put the movement together that made the beatbox house happen, that made all of us grow. Like, I happened to be there for all of it, and it was just really awesome. And so moving to New York in 2012, I was involved not only in the beatboxing scene, but I got involved in some nonprofit organizations, specifically the Hip Hop Reeducation Project, which I still am involved with today. Shout out to Farbian and Rabbi Darkside, who created that, who's also a man from Buffalo. And, you know, I started to get to learn about the roots of hip hop in New York. And that was really awesome and very important. And there were things that I started to uncover in my time here, just, you know, about, and this is kind of sort of getting away from beatboxing more and more into like the history of racism in America that is very well hidden from even people who are, you know, I grew up not, you know, I'm not a person who is closed-minded at all, but it was just like I still found out stuff in my 20s. And you know, throughout my time in New York, that really started to open my eyes to just like how, you know, messed up this is, how deep this all runs. And I will say that in the past week and a half, I think I've learned as much as I've learned in the past 8 years. It seems like, you know, I've really gotten to understand a bit more about the history behind the problems that we're seeing right now, how beatboxing can touch upon that, you know, and how, so I was also being involved in a cappella, how it's something that, you know, is not necessarily like out, what's the word? I don't want to say blatant, but like conscious. So like something that I think was a really big breakthrough for me just in the discussion of race is the term racism. And like something that, you know, this has been around for such a long time, but like, why is it a conversation that is still not fully addressed? Why is it so hard to talk about? Why is it so hard for white people to talk about, especially? And what I have come to learn and think of as racism isn't only outward conscious hate. Like, that's the worst of it, but it's a spectrum. And I watched a really great video that kind of described, that in America, racism is what is at the roots, at the that's what built this country. So as a white man in America, I am racist. I have profited off of a racist system, and that's okay to say because racist doesn't necessarily mean bad person. It's a bit more, it's a bit deeper than that, and I think it's something that's going to involve more understanding to really be able to fully tackle. But it's not necessarily, being a racist doesn't mean you're a bad person, I think is the biggest breakthrough. That it's like, I have profited off of a racist system, and I acknowledge that. And it doesn't mean that I'm outwardly like looking to be a racist person, be mean to somebody based on race. And I think being able to just say, admit, you know what, I am a racist, and that's okay to say is a big thing. And now, in terms of how beatboxing exists in acapella and the term vocal percussion, it's something that when it started, it might not have necessarily been a conscious, it maybe was. I can't speak on it. But it's something that
it was.
Huh? Okay.
I would argue that it was. To talk about that, just to bounce off.
Yeah. Get it.
That research a little bit. I think you're very right to talk about the idea of racism being a spectrum, and that it's a multifaceted kind of institutional, beyond a kind of moral tag on a person's identity thing to think about. I think it's very important to think about it as a systematic issue, for sure. But to talk about specifically the acapella scene and the beginnings in the early 1990s is when we start seeing vocal percussion showing up in acapella music, and that was a very consciously created, very intentionally redesigned appropriation of beatboxing that systematically removed the African American, Black, and hip hop elements from the music itself. They would specifically redesign the kinds of sounds you're making and the philosophies of both the pedagogical philosophies, like how you teach this music and how you think about yourself in performance, to realign this technique of making music with a historically white European aesthetic tradition. And it was a very clearly orchestrated, intentional move to create vocal percussion in the context that it is now in the acapella scene. So I just wanted to support what you were talking about there a little bit.
Sure. And so, I look at it there. I look at it, that was kind of something that I started to notice a little bit ago when in the acapella scene that kind of I started to think about and reach out to Galush while he was doing his research. And then there was just another thing that was said about, it is warm here in the city today. Wow. One thing that was said about the start of vocal percussion was that, it mimicked rock drums, not necessarily the sounds of the beatbox. The beatbox itself was a drum machine. And this is a wider conversation that I think also needs to be addressed, is just that, so it came from rock and roll music. Where did rock and roll music come from? Black culture. So, and that's something that as somebody who grew up on rock and roll, I want to do more work in the rock and roll community to really be like, listen, I feel like it's appropriation if you are profiting off of an art form from the Black community. And if you are, so that's across the board. If you're a beatboxer, if you're a rock and roller, if you're a DJ, and I'm just now finding out, like almost within the past couple of days, just how deep, or not just how deep, just like I African American, Black, Afro American music is popular music, like bang, period. And house music is, and disco, funk, electronic music, boom, that too. So if you're it covers a whole spectrum. And I think that it's just steps to take right now, because like, again, we're here, we got here, this is the society that we were born into, that this is what we're dealing with. I think that it is the duty, if you're profiting off of these art forms and not using your platform right now to bring attention to what's happening, then you're not doing your duty. You're appropriating that that art form. So I think that as beatboxers, I think it starts in our own community first. Like as beatboxers, if we as a community, and now as speaking as a white male, and as an American too, like because I realize and acknowledge that racism is obviously across the planet. It happens everywhere, and right now, it's just America has a unique situation to, if you want to put it that way, and it's also something that's so recent too. If you look at how recent this is compared to things that have happened in the past, like it's super important for any of us white people who practice these art forms to not only learn the history of our art forms and why it's important, but also the history of what's really at play here, and then to actually use our platform to draw attention to it. And so I think there's a lot of beatboxers that can just make a statement, even, and just say like, I acknowledge this. Oh, okay.
Hey,
Thank you,
Johnny,
John.
yo, I want to add something to that. This is D. Basically, even when you think about the term vocal percussion or vocal percussionist, the whole thing is there are many jazz musicians who have used that phrase even before it was quote unquote coined. And when you look at a Bobby McFerrin, he doesn't consider himself a beatboxer. He considers himself pretty much a vocalist or a vocal percussionist. When you look at someone like Al Jarreau, another vocal artist who was a jazz artist, and those are separate. I'm not saying it's different, but those are separate art forms rooted in a different sense of history. Now, when you're talking about human beatboxing, it's not just the drum machine, because one of the things that hip hop culture, in terms of when they started taking different pieces from different records, so many of the records that were played were rock records. Why rock records? Because the rock records had some of the hardest drums. Then you had the funk records that had hard drums. So you were replicating that sound of the drum. So it all comes down to the beginnings of it, the replicating the sound of the drum or the heartbeat. And to get away from, the thing is from the history, it's important that the history is always stressed and acknowledged, so that there isn't a situation like what happened with Airloom Beats. And, I've seen situations like that had to be checked. It's important that the history is in context and that people are able to take the beats, take the sounds, and learn. Traveling around the world, not just through beatboxing, but seeing other forms of hip hop being taken in certain contexts. It's important to be able to highlight the sensitivities, the diversity, and call out things when they're not right. So, and getting back to that original question, yes, there needs to be more people of color representing in the art form. I think that what's happening now is there's a resurgence of younger people of color who are picking up the art form. But one thing, the only difference that I see is not all of them are coming through the umbrella of just hip hop and hip hop culture. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but they should recognize that these are the roots. These are the roots of it. Wherever you take it is wherever you take it. But you always have to recognize where it comes from. And anyone that doesn't recognize where it comes from, it becomes a matter of something being disrespectful.
Appropriation. Can I bounce off of you, D? Do you guys mind if I do that?
Sure.
I know you want to say something, Galush. I definitely want to make space for that as well. But yes, like this is back to like the renaming and the culture and the roots of hip hop. Hip hop was started to create an inclusive environment for all people, because we know that all people can be oppressed and all people have, the need to express themselves. This isn't like Black people trying to be like, this is our stuff and you're not allowed. No, I think it's beautiful the way that beatboxing shows up in all of these different cultures. I would never dream of telling somebody from another country to stop beatboxing and using their voice like that. I think it's beautiful that they're inspired by this art form. But when you take away its roots and its history, people don't know why we're doing it. So, you know, when I was at Beatbox Camp, I had a conversation with some beatboxers where I tried to make this apparent to them, like, hey, no, this actually comes from Black culture. You know, this, like, we were in a situation where, you know, Black people were dying at exorbitant rates. They were either getting killed by each other or they were getting killed by the cops. And we saw this pattern where if we were to continue to go the way that we were going, we were all going to end up dead or in prison. And the gang members felt that they needed to come up with a solution. And the solution was music and hip hop. They felt that this was the way that we can communicate. Tried to express this to some beatboxers and they just brushed it off. And I don't think they would have done that if I was there with D.Cross or Chesney or if Verbal Ace was next to me or Rozelle. I know they would never dream of saying something like that to Rozelle, but they would say something like, you know, there's evidence that people were beatboxing in the caves, so you can't really say that. But the culture that we participate in right now has been built from Black people. I had that conversation and I felt really shut down. But then the next day, there was this Polish gentleman. I don't remember his name, but I'm very grateful to him because he had a genuine question. He was just like, why do we battle like this? I think it's so strange that like we're battling. Normally, when there's like a musical competition, there's like a recital. People, you go up on the stage, you do your thing, there's a rubric, judges judge, and then you go off and then people are placed that way. Why the battle in beatboxing? And this comes from Black culture. The reason that we battle in hip hop culture is because it creates a conversation. It creates a back and forth. It creates an opportunity for parties to be heard and for witnesses to see and to progress in that conversation, you know? So instead of being like, you shot my cousin, now I get to kill you. Now, oh my God, you killed my cousin, now I'm gonna kill your mom. No, now we're like, hey, you did this thing and it bothered me and I'm gonna tell you in front of all these people, what do you have to say for yourself? Then the person responds. So that's really where this battle culture comes from. It comes from an opportunity, or it comes from the need to be expressed and to be heard, you know, not from the need to dominate. It's coming from the space for us to get on the same page and unify, for us to express our differences and be at peace with them. Like, oh, so you think this way. I think this way, but now I know why you think the way you do. So you know what? I'm gonna just let it rock. Now I understand, and we can just live differently now. This is from Black culture. And I'm just gonna echo one more time what Johnny said. If you are profiting from this culture that is born out of Black pain, right? None of this would exist if Black people weren't feeling the pain that we felt. We literally have nothing else but our voices. And that voices have come through time and time again with our slave songs and our beatboxing and our hip hop culture. You know, if you're benefiting from this culture, I think the least you can do is pay homage to the people who inspired you.
I'm going to return to that point in a moment about importance of voice. Galush?
I just want to, I won't be long with this point because I do want to pass off to Galush, but I did want to go back to just kind of talk a little bit about why many of the beatboxers in my generation never went to the World Beatbox Championships earlier when it was you know, first kind of getting off the ground. You know, it was inherently rooted in white supremacy. The World Beatbox Championships, well, you know, the guy's not trying to call him out, but when you create a logo of the World Beatbox Championship of Europe, years, that's what the logo was. The logo of what represented, like what represented beatboxing was literally the continent of Europe. So you had for years, you know, if you wanted to go participate in the World Beatbox Championship, you basically had to acknowledge, you know, that this was European. So there was an immense. But I don't know if D.Cross wants to speak to this because I don't want to create like division, because that's not what this is about. I think we have to kind of check ourselves. Just one last little point. That, so I think Arabelle, I think you made this point, and that is, these events inherently exclude Black people because Black people have been excluded economically. It's like you can't think that I don't think that dominant culture, or just talking about America, really understands the depths of the economic disparity that exists in the majority of Black America here. We are the most, we're the most incarcerated race of people on the planet, right, per capita. Like, to give you an example, the median income of a Black family in Boston, or the median wealth rather of a Black family in Boston, $8 US dollars. Median white family in Boston, $100,000. Okay? This is akin to like, this seems greater than the pharaohs. You think about the level of inequality. So I think that's and I won't hog the conversation. I'm pass to Galush, but I definitely speak about with regards to this, because we need to really talk about reparations in many different spaces throughout American society, and that's one of the conversations that I think is not being had. Anyway, yes.
Over to Galush. I'm gonna bring Zaini into the conversation in a moment, but
Please do. Yeah, you can go right there to Zaini. Yeah.
How you doing, Zaini? You're on mute at the moment.
Sorry. Yeah, it's been really interesting to hear everyone's points, and I think definitely representation, or coming from London perspective, and seeing how we're so influenced by music culture, by electronic music, and to see where that has come from, and to see, I remember one of my friends came to the beatbox event, to the Beatbox Champs, and I was like, oh, how do you like how we've done the event, man? And he was like, it's amazing. He's like, where's all the black people, bro? And I was like, bro, it's true. Like, where is the people? Where are the people it comes from? And I had to kind of check myself then, because then I realized, me being the only Asian guy to be in the scene at the time, and kind of seeing myself and seeing it from my eyes and seeing how it developed, I was kind of shocked as how it has changed so much. And that's due to the fact of, like Chesney was saying, it's the economic disparity between it. Because working with the Beatbox Academy many years ago, a lot of the people we were working with were disenfranchised youths, and they are from the hood, and they are the people that see it at the grassroots level, and they're the people that are embracing the culture and the movement for kind of what it really kind of, how it starts, how hip hop culture, and you're learning about the history, you're learning about the roots. And I think that through that, there needs to be more programs, more education, more platforms for people to be represented. And I am seeing more now, like the resurgence of the youth now, they are getting involved, but there was a time frame where it wasn't represented. And I think it's important that, yeah, it's really hard to get all these thoughts out right now, because so many people have said so many topics and it could go to so many angles. I'm just trying to navigate which topics I want to really touch. So
yeah, no, I think that's a really interesting point. I guess what's interesting me, and talking from a British perspective that we share, both people of color in this community, is that why are there not? So you talk about young people of color being more involved in beatboxing, but why aren't there tons of them? If we're talking about the idea as the voice being this democratic tool which allows us to create music or create culture or create influence without the tools that would otherwise be provided to people with privilege, why in the UK is it not the case?
I think it's interesting because if you think about music in general, what is popular music and who's going to the festivals and who's going to all these big nights and who can afford to go and hear these music live. And it does go back to that economic disparity that Chesney was talking about. When you go to festivals in UK, who are the majority of people at festivals? A lot of them are white people, and they can afford to go to these festivals. You see small pockets of people of color there, and who are doing the best nights and providing the best entertainment. A lot of these events, a lot of these festivals, and what are you raving to? What are you buying into? Are you buying into the culture? Are you buying into this image of what is popular right now? And people don't understand like how to separate those things. And I think once you check yourself and you realize you're in a system that is built this way, I think it's very interesting to see how lost you can get easily. Like imagine discovering beatboxing right now. You know, some kid in whatever country discovers it, they type beatboxing, you're going to see what's popular right now. And that music, which is popular right now, is electronic music. And you're seeing a lot of dubstep music. And the people that are raving to those musics are a lot of white people, rich white kids that go partying. They don't understand the history and the roots of where that comes from. So it goes back to re-educating, re-implementing all these systems that we need to get to them.
That's a really interesting point that you make, and if I'm reading this right, there's a role of the audience as well. So we spent quite a lot of time here talking about systemic racism or discrimination or prejudice or whatever it might be that creates a certain representation within artists. But here we were talking about audience as well. So I'm opening it out to everyone else. What role do the audience have in the context of beatbox to build greater representation?
Pass on to someone else.
I want to add to that. Audience wise, one of the things that happens is a lot of times the audience can dictate what the person or the beatboxer is creating music wise, rather than them saying, you know what, I'm just going to create what I feel like really creating and put it out there and have people get behind it. That's something that's definitely a factor. Also, it touches on the factor of like when you say electronic music, people, the audience now is global. You're going across the world with the internet, so people are a lot of times mimicking what they see as opposed to just going on what they feel. So sometimes you have to create the audience and not be afraid and be brave with it. Have a recognition of what came before, but also have a vision of where you want to take it and be brave with that. Not be afraid to say, okay, boom, here, this is who I am and this is where I want to take it. In terms of audience, one of the things that just made me think about, I think of an artist like Butterscotch. Amazing artist, beautiful sister. I love her. She's been able to crack into so many different audiences based on just being who she is. That's important. And I think every single person that's here on this panel has an element, they're unique. Everybody is unique. And I think that when we take our differences and our uniqueness and celebrate it and then say it's okay and move and create audiences like that, I think that it'll change a lot in terms of perceptions.
I think that's a really powerful point about identity and flipping it and the role of the individual and the artist and the creative to themselves.
I just wanted to add to that. I think it's important to when we're thinking about the audience. It's like, yes, the stage is very often therapeutic for us as artists, and it's like it's certainly a home. But I think it's also important to know that the stage was really made for the audience, right? So it's really about like what it is that we we give and the representation that we give. So just to kind of bring it back to the importance of what we put on that stage to give to the audience, you know, like we do when we are performing and we're sharing with the audience, we're shaping and transforming culture. Shaping and we're transforming culture, right? And how people interact with themselves, right? So, you know, there's an immense responsibility that comes with that. You know, that's why I'm glad that this is happening here in this conversation, right? Because, you know, there was a film called Birth of a Nation, right? And in this film, Birth of a Nation, which was D.W. Griffith, right? D.W.
Yes,
Griffith
specified because they had a remake recently. So the Birth of a Nation that happened, I think it was made like 1936 or something like that.
It was the first film. Yes, thank you, Arabelle. It was the first blockbuster film. It was the Star Wars of its day, right? And it was a silent film. And I don't say this to talk about necessarily D.W. Griffith, because what he did was innovative, right? The images that he put on that screen were some of the most horrific
Wild
in terms
derogatory.
of, yes, very derogatory. It basically incited murdering Black people. It incited like the rise of the Klan. So there's a man that saw that film named Oscar Micheaux. So Oscar Micheaux, right, was a director, and he would have been basically the Spike Lee of silent films. Nobody knows his name today. They know D.W. Griffith. They don't know Oscar Micheaux. Right? And what Oscar Micheaux did was that he looked up and he's like, oh my God, he understood the power of those images. And he said to himself, he made his life's work to make films that showed Black people as doctors, that showed Black people as human beings, as lawyers, as people who actually had souls, because he knew what effect that would have on Black people, right? Because of how we saw ourselves, right? Which is one of the, it's kind of like getting to the core of this, like the audience, we see ourselves in these spaces, and it's important when we don't see ourselves. And this goes to the case in point of, like, you know, what is this relationship with the audience, right? Right now, the audience for beatbox, for me, you know, feels a bit insular, right? We don't understand the power of like what it means for outside the beatboxing world, right? And Oscar Micheaux, you know, was another artist who basically, you know, died broke, died penniless, died with nothing, you know, but left a legacy. We can, if we search in the history books, go back and look for. We have to think about this as you know, our community. What is our lack of representation saying to the wider audience? This is really key and important. And I'm going to pass it back to Galush, but I think it's important because, you know, beatboxing is not about, so it's not about celebrity. It's the primal vibration of healing. Primal vibration of, like, somebody seeing what, like, be healed by that in a world that is taking away their humanity all the time, right? That is constantly separating each other, right? So yeah, I'm going to pass it to Galush, because I know you've been waiting for a while, but.
Of course. There's two things I really want to jump immediately out of your conversation with. Firstly is recognize the economic needs of your community and pay the Black artists who are doing the work to produce your culture. Nothing is I think more indicative of that than, for example, the story of Big Mama Thornton, who wrote the rock song of the 50s, Hound Dog, and performed it across America, and then it was purchased by Elvis for like $500, who then went and made millions off of it. And I think that really does two things. And one, points out the kind of economic disparity and taking advantage of the artists who are making your music. And two, it can bring us back to what we can do as an audience. So we can pay the black artists who are making the music. We can also refuse to accept bullshit on the stage. Like there's an incredible amount of power in the audience itself to determine what kinds of culture and attitudes and vibes we're putting out on stage. We as artists are designed intuitively to be in touch with our audience. And while balancing, personal and organic expression, which is always going to come first, with recognizing the power of the audience that we're interacting with, I think the audience is criminally underrated in terms of the ways that it itself can determine the kinds of expressions that are happening on stage, and what it will accept and what it will promote, and whose voices it will amplify and choose to exalt on stage. I think this really brings us back to something that I saw in the chat a second ago. I was checking out the Twitch stream chat. So there's a couple conversations in there that I thought were really important. Bring us back to this question of appropriation. I think it's really essential to be clear about the difference between just doing the music itself and what's called signifying in a lot of like critical race theory, for example. Someone asked like why is it wrong or how is it appropriation if I just do rock music? Like how is just making the certain music appropriating? And it's not. I think it's really essential to point that out, is that just the action of doing the music, like myself being a white artist making hip hop music or doing rock music or doing whatever, those questions of genre are so much less the center point of what we understand as appropriation, as is the benefiting off of it, as is doing what Elvis did, was taking the song that a black woman wrote about a hound dog, which was a lover, not an actual dog. Like the whole line, "You ain't ever caught a rabbit," that is not in the original song. It was about Big Mama Thornton's like guy who was a ball and chain. She has another song called "Ball and Chain," and the idea here is that taking the song itself and profiting off of it, and then leaving the black artist to die poor, as has happened across the history of popular music in America, which is African American music, is black music. That question of appropriation gets lost when we don't recognize that doing the music itself isn't appropriating. It's doing it without incorporating the ideas of hip-hop knowledge, that sixth element, the knowledge that is going to permeate all the 5 elements that ties this entire idea together. This idea of signifying, the idea of the remix, what hip-hop is built out of. Signifying, it's like this kind of cultural intertextuality. It's this idea of calling back to the past and rebuilding, sampling older material and using it in a new way, and using it in a new constructive way that adds additional layers and levels of cultural meaning to not just the music itself, right, but to the act of performing it, to the culture that is created, and to the audience that has a voice in the creation of that music. I think that engaging with this overarching topic of appropriation, as we had among many other topics today, we can think about this idea of permeating our art form with the knowledge and doing our homework and knowing about our history and acting appropriately in the context of that history to actively anti-racistly move our culture forward. And everyone in the audience and on the stage has the power to do that in their own way. So I wanted to pass it maybe to Arabelle and Chesney, who both seem like they wanted to respond.
Yes, I'm going to give Chesney a second to come back on, but yes, thank you so much, Galush. Like, it is so, like, I said this 2 weeks ago, but I'm going to say it again in front of all these people. It is so refreshing to see how you are, accepting this truth, and how you are, like, creating a way to like give it back. And I think the way that you're phrasing this and the way that you're talking about it is right on the money. And I really, really appreciate that. And I would love to appreciate all of you beatboxers that are out here profiting off of your beatbox career, speaking like Galush, or at least acknowledging where it came from. We beatboxers love to do remixes, right? And you know that if you're going to be doing a remix, you have to give credit to the people that originally did it. You know,
Shout out to Arabelle.
Thank you. What? Okay, thank you. But like, you have to like. How are you gonna cover a song by a hip hop artist? Probably a song that is talking about police brutality. And then you're not gonna say anything about Black issues. Like, are you only gonna wait till that artist gets shot by the cops to say something about it, to say how much they meant to you? You know? So, I mean, like, we're talking about action steps. This is one action step that I'd like to offer to any viral beatboxer out there, any beatboxer that's able to earn money off of their views on YouTube. I challenge you to choose a Black beatboxer or a Black artist to remix. And, like, if you want to make this a competition, let's see who can raise the most money for an organization, for Black Lives Matter, or for the ACLU, or for, you know, Breonna Taylor's Justice Fund, or for, you know, George Floyd's, like, daughter's college fund, whatever fund you want to donate to. But I wonder which beatboxer could raise more money for this and also raise awareness. You know, the song, like, you guys were out here bumping this song, "This Is America." You're like, oh, snap, this is a bop. Are you listening to the song?
Right.
Are you hearing it? Have you seen the video? There's so much of Black culture in that video. How can you have this song and, like, you know, get all this praise, like, oh, snap, that song is so fire. I know that original, and now you have this remix. Yes, you're right. It is fire. But, like, you're just doing it and benefiting off of it, and then you're not going to speak on any of the issues that song is highlighting. You're not going to use this voice. And this is it. This is the thing. Like, beatboxers, we have the most powerful voices. We're literally addicted to power voices. This is all we want to do. We are addicted to making a room shake with the power of our voice. We are so powerful, all of us, every single one of us. And if you were to just take just a fraction of that power that you have and just, like, gear it towards, like, you know what? I'm gonna start this Dougie Fresh challenge, and I'm gonna remix Lottie Dottie. And if this gets a certain amount of views, or I'm gonna make it like a donation link, I'm gonna donate it all to Black Lives Matter. Or maybe Rozelle. Maybe you want to do an If Your Mama Only Knew challenge. You know, Verbal Ace just put something out. He put out a little Wakanda beat. I challenge you, if you really think that your voice is that important to this scene, and I think it is, because you guys are making global headway, and I think that the way that we are bonding as a community through this space is so beautiful, but we need your help. We need your help. You know, like, it might not register to you, but, like, what would happen if D.Cross got pulled over by the cops? Chesney is 20 minutes away from Minneapolis right now. You know, I could get pulled over by the NYPD, and you may never even hear from me again. I won't even become a hashtag. You know, like, we need your voices. We're not asking you to stop by any means. Just give credit to where it's due. You know, like, pay homage to the person that inspired you, especially if it is a Black person. You know, pay homage, please. I yield my time.
Oh, yeah. Just I wanted to add to what Arabelle was saying. You know, I think one of the things that's happened is in beatboxing is that even though we're using our voices, it seems like we have a limited scope of what the voice actually is. Okay. You know, it's like your voice has to, like, you know, if you want to, this is one of the questions I think that was posed in the email when we were talking about having this conversation, is like, you know, it's a universal language, right? Right? We often hear that term. We're universal language. Our art is a universal language. Yeah, but what the fuck are we saying? What the fuck is the dialogue that we're actually having with each other? Like, this is the moment that we start becoming a universal language, because we're talking about shit that matters, right? Like the it's like when I love seeing, like, and I know sometimes I make sports analogies, but it's like, you know, one of the reasons that I really kind of got out of the Michael Jordan sphere when I was a kid is because I had grown up in Chicago. I've known people that and I know people who've actually, been attacked, shot, killed for Jordans. And so then when he didn't have a voice to say something about what was going on, I started to be like, well, what really does Michael Jordan matter in the larger scheme of things? Like what does he matter? So it's like, I think for us, when we think about like using our voices, we have to stand for something as a community. We have to have this kind of dialogue and exchange of ideas and understanding. Obviously the history and all of these things is true, but we need to be about being about transformation. Johnny, Airloom, Scratchy. I mean, like those people who kind of on the front lines, D, on the front lines of like using beatboxing as a tool for justice, like going into communities and actually using this art form in a way that actually liberates people is, I mean, that was the core for me. Like beatboxing was this liberating thing for me, like coming up as a kid, like, wow, I'm seeing this person just like on a playground, just like, bringing people together, and there was a message usually to it, right? It was this beatbox and this MC, right? So there was this message to it, and the MC might have been talking about real shit that we had going on in our community, real stuff that people were dying from. It was like the news. So I would just say that, like, when we start talking about, beatboxing being a language, I think it's real talk, but I think we need to be really clear about what is the discussion that language is having.
Well, this is a really interesting point, and I think that.
Can I just piggyback on that super quick?
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
Just in. Oh, sorry. Chezzy, say the last thing you said just one more time. Just the. Sorry. The something we jumped on a call to kind of talk about this a couple weeks ago, some of us in here, and there was something that really struck me, and like I have gotten to the point of my life where I certainly don't believe in coincidences anymore, and there was these two ideas. One that I've always been, just the idea of beatboxing is a tool to help empower youth, but anybody across the board to find their voice. So let's just, we got this right here, right? Now we have these riots happening in America, and the quote of MLK saying that the riots are the language of the unheard. Okay, now we have this sitting right here. So it's like we have things happening, language of the unheard. Now we have this powerful art form that, gives voice. And then Arabelle, for what you just said, is like, I have just had so many light bulbs this past week and a half. It's overload almost. But yes, our voices are potentially the most powerful on the planet. Not potentially, they are. Human beatboxers can do anything. And honestly, one of my favorite things about beatboxing is it's like, if I can do an 808 with my face, maybe there's somebody in the audience who's on the fence of going for what their passion is. So it's like inspiring, because it's like, wow, people are capable of doing this with our face. Now, geez, imagine like so separate from that, if we take this conversation and what's happening right now, and if we can properly address this within our community, it could be an example for the rest of the world globally outside of the beatboxing community in how to deal with this within other communities. And it could be just something that, like, it could speak volumes way beyond the beatboxing community, and we have potentially a really awesome chance to address this with something. There's some correlation there is all that I'm kind of getting at.
Yeah, I agree. I think.
Hey, I just want to quickly let people know. Just quickly letting people know that I have to go at 3:30, so I will be signing off at 3:30 today. Thank you so much for your time.
We'll be sorry to miss your brain, but I think just going back to what you were just saying, Johnny. I think there's so I'm not a beatboxer, but I've been a beatbox fan pretty much all my life, and that's how I got involved with Zany and the UK Beatbox Championships and in Mexico as well. And as an audience member, watching beatboxers, there is no expectation ever that a beatbox would speak beyond the performance. And so there is almost like a fourth wall. Now, traditionally, the fourth wall is the distance between the audience and the artist, but there is also a fourth wall in terms of the voice of a beatboxer. There is no expectation that a beatboxer will come up with anything profound in a performance setting, and this is, I think, a problem. And again, this explores the responsibility of the artist and the responsibility of the audience. And as Natty Speaks pointed out in the chat earlier on Twitch, also responsibility of the promoter. So just to send this back out to you all, how do you, practically speaking, as a beatboxer on stage, how do you break out of that fourth wall?
I am very familiar with this fourth wall. I do have some acting training. And I actually kind of feel like it's not necessarily like it's not that I have like my own contained self and I'm demonstrating it. I'm actually feeding from the audience. You know, I'm actually getting their energy and they're feeding me, right? So we were talking about the responsibility of the audience, and it's kind of like I'm giving them what they need, you know. I kind of just want to highlight, like, over this past week, I had this really powerful experience with Johnny. We went to a protest together, and he brought his portable amp, his battery amp, and we were out there protesting with Black Lives Matter. And like, not only was I just super excited to see Johnny, because he's the first beatboxer I got to hang out with in 3 months, but we were just adding beats to the protest, and the energy, like the people were like, ah! The people were so excited about it. We turned it into a whole party. When we finally got to the Barclays Center, we just went out there like, we want to amplify the voices. We want to amplify the people that are here organizing this protest, and we have this amp here to like literally amplify you. And it took like little effort for us to take over that whole protest. We did not try at all. It more felt like an accident. Like, we were sort of like, we're here. We just want to let you know we're here if you need us. And then they were like, awesome. We need like it all. And to have my brother here literally amplifying my voice and the collective voice of my people with his equipment and his skills, you know, so that I can be here and I can feel and I can be angry. And Johnny's here like holding it down with a beat, pushing this amp, providing this mic for people that want to share their stories and their feelings in that moment. So powerful. So if you're a beatboxer and you feel called to go to these protests in your town, I'm not going to tell you to do it because like coronavirus, like I'm not going to tell you to do it. But if you feel compelled to do it, bring your amp, amplify the voice. You would be doing so much for that protest to connect that audience, you know? I don't know if I answered your question. I have no idea what I said about breaking the fourth wall. But I mean, like, it is also a hip hop thing, you know, the call and response. Like, when I say hip, you say hop. There is no fourth wall. We're in this together.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to Johnny.
Yep. I mean, because it's definitely intention of the artist. It has to start with the artist to be able to connect with the people and be with the people, connect that energy to be able to transform, and that's where it has to come from. And I think that beatboxers, they're really not that, in my opinion, that different from the other performers or any of the other musicians but they're using their gifts and they're using their tools, and it's what you do with it, how you do what you do with it, your intention, making that connection and taking that risk to make that connection, and to be able to leave people with pieces of something that they can walk away with. You know, it's like dropping a seed. You drop a seed into the soil, and all the people to the soil, and they'll take it, and they'll have part of that tree growing, and they might be able to blossom from that tree and drop more seeds. So that's the important thing to really see as a beatboxer or a vocal instrumentalist, whatever you want to call it with all the name of it, and recognize its roots in struggle, social change, uplifting, all of those things connected right there.
Going to pass it back to Chesney and then to Galush for some final words before he has to go.
Yeah, just real quick, just to add to this, because this is a beautiful conversation. You know, it kind of reminds me about when I was early on in the American Beatbox Championships. You know, I always wanted to have panel discussions and dialogue and really talk about our art form and what it is. You know, but the idea at the time, and then mostly because we were young, was kind of like just shut up and beatbox. You know, which I totally understood, right? The thing is that if you don't tell stories and the narratives, you will disappear. Okay?
Yeah.
If you don't tell the stories and the narratives of where you come from, you will disappear. And it is, you know, like Brother Scratchy was just talking about, you know, like the origins of this, you know, of how the craft and the art was used was you know, was a means of real communication. We used arts as a means of real communication. I'll give you an example, right? Like Underground Railroad, right? The maps for the Underground Railroad were hidden in the braids of the women's hair. We use art to communicate really imperative and important truths. And secondly, when we think about just like, you know, and I'm passing it off about, you know, beatboxing and its musical storytelling, how could you not listen to Coltrane and hear a story? You know, how could you not listen to John Coltrane and not hear a story from beginning to end? I very seldom hear that when I'm like, you know, I think it's happening more now with beatboxers as beatboxers are making more songs and things like that, you know. But the culture itself, you know, needs to really get away from this battle mentality. I'm sorry, I know that's not a popular, maybe a popular thing to say, but it actually like blocks growth at some point. It's great in terms of the development of the lexicon of the actual sounds and so forth. Then it blocks you, you know, because then it's like, you know, Bobby, like I think about Bobby McFerrin's "Don't Worry, Be Happy." Like that song is going to be playing for 300 more years because it connects to people. It tells a story and it connects to people. Like we have to be focused on creating work, creating our art that actually uplifts people and changes people's lives and has a clear story. We can't just be in isolation. Okay, sorry. Galush, I know you got to go, so.
I appreciate that. Thanks so much for all your words, Chesney. Yeah, but before I head out, I just wanted to echo something else that you said, which was that if beatboxing is a universal language, as we all like to say, what the fuck are we saying with it? And that's really what I think we have to ask ourselves, and particularly as I hope in the next section of our conversation we're able to bring in, I know a lot of the Americans have dominated the conversation somewhat, so I do want to, and obviously I'll watch the rest of the conversation after I leave when it comes out on Twitch, etc. So I do really want to hear from everyone else. But if beatboxing is a universal language, what the fuck are we saying with it? it makes me think of Chimamanda Adichie's TED Talk about the dangers of a single story. And I think that when we heighten, for example, the battle culture, yes. I think when we heighten the specific genre and aesthetic tradition of certain kinds of music that get valued for no reason other than the kind of perpetual kind of turning wheel of this culture aesthetic that we're on, when we value one single kind of music, one single kind of performer, one single kind of person, one single kind of voice, we lose so much of the value and richness of this community, which is entirely based on sharing. It's not just the power of your voice, it's the power of your voice in the cipher and in between artists and that kind of growth. Coming back to when I talked about signifying earlier, coming back to this idea of additive evolution. When we add more to the stuff that we take from, right? When we sample stuff, when we remix songs, we're adding more to it, and they grow in value. They appreciate in value in the same way that the crisis of like wealth distribution in America in particular is so linked to the additive value of like owning land, like housing, like land. Like the American landscape appreciates in value. It grows in value as we add more to it and as it ages, as it continues rolling down this path. So when we talk about the role of beatboxing as this universal language, the stuff we say grows in power and it grows in value as we get more and more people involved. So to bring this back to Adichie's danger of the single story, when we look at the dangers of all these other examples that we've seen where one story is valued and given above all the rest, and it depreciates the value of everyone else's voice. When we see that these historical examples of valuing one thing over everything else, we lose the power of this community to grow in value in its diversity. I think that's really the main point here. And as we move on to the next stage of the conversation, I hope we can talk more about specific action steps and specific ways that we can deal with our individual communities and the needs that arise in them from around the world, and particularly in the U.S. You know, I talk a lot about acapella because that's what I'm able to speak on and familiar with, and really have a voice there. So I use the voice that I have and the knowledge I have in terms of the history of beatboxing and its relationship with acapella music. And for me, what I see as an action step there is specifically working with the acapella community to engage in their reproduction of knowledge, in their appreciation of power and voice in their community. Because as they do more of their music, they also are growing in power. And we can use our incredible educators from around the world and incredible voices to make sure that this history is told and taught and change the pedagogical approaches of a lot of these a cappella people, right? So I'm looking at that in terms of the kind of American sense, right? But in terms of around the world, there's very different realities and needs from around different cultures. And when you lose the diverse voices, when you're only listening to that one single story, you can lose your ability to be in touch with that and know what it is that you need to do. You can lose your ability to be informed on what action steps we can take next. So hopefully, as I'm heading out, I do have to go. We can move on to maybe some action steps and things that we think we can make start happening, because it's really important to talk and educate, but also it's time for action. And I think especially in the time of coronavirus and defunding the police and all of these really other important is really essential actions to be taken. There's more and specific things that the beatbox community can do. So that's it for me today. Thank you so much for being here with me. I really appreciate all of your time today, and have an excellent
love to you, man. Big love to you, Galush, man.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
For
Hear your words.
Thank you so much, Galush. Thank you.
Absolutely nailed it. So
Thank you.
Thank you, Galush.
Yeah, man. To take the baton from Galush and move this conversation forward to action, I'm going to bring Scratchy back into the conversation just talk a little bit
Yeah.
about the context with the French beatbox community. French beatbox community is absolutely killing it right now. But in terms of what we're talking about at the moment, what action do you think could work in the French beatbox community? Improve diversity.
So to bounce off what Ganesh was saying, I think we need to connect with cultural centers to actually get kids to get creative with beatbox, not necessarily to exist in a performance perspective, but into a creative perspective. So I've got this little book. It's called Beatbox. It's a collection of all the beatboxes that producers used to use back then to actually create music. Um, so basically, what is beatbox? Beatbox is the use of the voice to create music, right? So by teaching kids how to record, they can actually get something out of this art form and potentially get out of a situation where they, which would be of disadvantage. So I think this is the point. So historically, Doogie Fresh might have coined human beatbox because he was actually imitating that beatbox. And Razel put a picture on Instagram lately, which was the Univox SR120, but there's like many other one, like the TR-808, blah, blah. And many producers have actually used. Funny thing is that we actually forgot that huge producers are beatboxers. For example, if I take Timbaland, he's huge on beatbox, but he's actually using beatbox to create those unique rhythms. And I think this is what we have to put forward toward kids, showing them the way through the machines, showing them the way through recordings. And of course, like I don't know, I think the battle scene is more of a training ground to push your art form, your sounds, whatever, and maybe publicity stunt. And then once you go out there, you can have a community to promote to who's interested. But other than this, I think there's a lot of things that we can do with beatbox. The history of beatbox, the history of hip hop. It's a liberation art form, and I think why the world has reacted to such a magnitude is that the language of hip hop has been around the world to so many countries that people have been able to have compassion for what they've seen as horrible images. But for us, like for the black experience, I think it's something we've seen for such a long time. I don't know for you guys, but it was like mentally super hard, like to see, to be reminded of all the atrocities like in the centuries. I'm not even speaking in years. I'm speaking centuries. I'm thinking about Emmett Till. I'm thinking about Tulsa. I'm thinking about so many massacres. People have no idea what has been going on, and I hope this time, like, people will finally understand that they need to catch the train of knowledge, because we will not have like the gaslighting, as Arabella was saying. It's enough is enough. We have to make a move forward for all the communities. We have to learn from each other to be able to live together. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Scratchy. Zany, I just wanted to get your perspective from in terms of the British community. What action steps do you think could be taken for the unique context of the UK beatbox scene?
I think as also being one of the organizers of the champs, like bringing people that represent us in the movement, like getting the judges, getting speakers, getting more workshops. I think it's really important to get enough people to care, because I think there was a clip about Dave Chappelle saying you need to get people to reach a critical mass. You need to get people enough to care, and once you have enough people that care, then you won't need to shout about it anymore. Like the reason that we're having this conversation, because not enough people care. And once you reach that tipping point, you people will understand that, wow, these conversations need to be had. They shouldn't need to be had in the first place, but the fact that they are shows the scale of the disproportionate base the society is set up. And yeah, as being one of the organizers of the UK Champs, I'm definitely going to put my words into action, and hopefully start seeing other people, other organizers of championships, to realize the importance of inclusion and representation in the battles, and the history, and why it's so important. Because the microphone's a powerful tool. You know, you're empowering people, doing work with kids, like you're giving them a voice. You know, you're someone that doesn't have the confidence to speak in front of people. It's not just beatboxing, you know. Now they will have the confidence to speak up in front of a situation where they wouldn't necessarily be comfortable in the first place. You know, when you give someone that power and empowerment, you will stand up for injustice, or you will stand up for something what you believe in. And beatboxing is a very powerful tool that can give you those. It's I think it's really, really important that we can start to have these conversations, people. Johnny?
Yeah. So if I could just piggyback off that and bring a couple points together about some thoughts that I have. One thing I want to do in terms of an organizer, I want to shout out fucking Scott Jackson, Beatbox Canada. That dude puts on the Great North Beatbox Battle, and it's not just a beatbox battle; it's a DJ battle, it's a breakdance battle, or b-boy battle. They have graffiti, they have MCs battle as well. So it's like, as an organizer, he makes it intentional to bring in all the other elements of hip hop every Great North battle, which I think there's an idea there. It's really awesome. In the American champs, in the past couple of years now, we've had like these lifetime achievement awards where Dougie Fresh has come and spoke, Kid Lucky's come and spoke. It's awesome that, because I remember my first American champs in 2012. I had been beatboxing for 6 months. I just moved to the city, and it was really 2 months after I moved there. Razel, Butterscotch, Korean Effects judging panel. And Razel was pissed at all the dubstep beats and called out everyone for doing dubstep. And he's like, damn, I hear a lot of dubstep. I haven't heard one hip hop beat. And he literally on stage, he got upset. He was like, no more dubstep beats. Next person I hear do a dubstep beat. And that like sparked an entire thought process in, it's just like in the American scene, at least, damn, especially for representing the it came from America. It's like the American scene, I think, has started down that path to bring educational things into championships and things to have this knowledge spread. So there's like, having guest speakers and other forms of hip hop art in battles is one way of doing it. Now, to backpedal all the way back to when Arabelle was talking about when we were performing out at the protest, and I think like the original question was like, you said that you would never expect a beatboxer to like do or touch upon something serious, right? Was that what one of the vibes was, I believe? So just the idea that like, when you go to a battle, you wouldn't necessarily expect somebody to speak on something. And also just like the idea of the battle scene versus performing in beatboxing. And I think there's correlations here that it's kind of blowing my mind. I've always dreamt of the day that the beatboxing community and art form is not underground. I want this shit to be fucking mainstream. We can change the world. Beatboxers have the ability that it's just wildly inspiring. And I dream that 5, 10, however long from now, it's like beatboxing is a household name, just like the day that the masses know what modern day beatboxers can do. And then just the conversation around the battle scene, it definitely pushes the art form forward. But it's like, if that's ever going to happen, music needs to be presented in a way that's just starting to happen now. Albums, the way that it existed outside of a battle community, right? If you look at a singer, they have albums, they have music, they have songs, they have tracks, and now action steps for beatboxers in and outside of battles. Arabelle, I wanted to say that this exact thing, not expecting something serious to come from a beatboxer, well, you have written pieces that are exactly that, right? If when you start to incorporate lyrics, you can incorporate a message, and beatboxing is magic. You can cast a spell on people. So imagine casting this spell on people and then slipping in some like language, right? Just like it could be an original where you write words, and if not, it could be an intentional cover, right? You could cover a song. There's obviously songs that touch upon this, where if you're intentional about the mess, like it's really about just giving beatboxing a message, right? And I feel like there's Spider Horse, the homies have almost started a movement with musical beatboxing, right? Like they have done some of the most musical stuff I've ever heard with beatboxers, and I feel like that's starting to have a draw in the battle scene was huge. I thought that was really cool because it's like, you listen to them. I've seen them cause people to cry because it's just like, wow, this isn't just. It's like, oh damn, this can like really touch people's hearts and souls, and it really deeply. And so I think if we were to take that power and just put conscious messages behind the routines, the battles, I don't really think that I know what I'm saying. It's like, say something there. That's all that could be an easy way to just, it's like, oh, maybe you have someone in the audience that hears that lyric and is like, I never thought about that. And then it's just like, you're starting a conversation that way. And it can also be outside of battles too. You could just have a performance and just say something in your performance.
Yeah.
Well, it is
Johnny,
to just
those are great action ideas. I'm so sorry, Zany. Let me just say this
go.
super quick. As somebody who teaches the arts to many, many different kinds of populations, I would never dream of telling an artist to change their artistry. I would never tell you to, like I said, I would never dream of telling somebody to beatbox or to beatbox in a certain way. I think that the way that the beatboxers are doing it, you guys are crushing it. You're already crushing it. What I'm asking for is just more recognition, right? And Scott Jackson, a double shout out to Scott Jackson, because like one thing that he does, he's just like, let's just give a quick shout out to the Bronx, right? Like just something like that, I think is impactful for our community to be like, yes, thank you, we're recognized, So it's like, if we can acknowledge that, like that Black people have made major contributions to our personal creative lives and our inspiration, like I would love to see what you could create for us. Like, could you create something for us, please? Because we would really, really appreciate it. We really, really need it. I know like the race conversation is very scary. I know that a lot of white people are like reluctant to speak out because they don't want to be wrong, or they don't want to be targeted, or they don't want to start all of these arguments or something. But I think that if you already start in a place of love, doing something you love, aka beatboxing, and then you pay some homage to the people who have laid down this foundation for you, I think that we could have a lot of power. And like as a Black person, I would feel like, thank you. I would appreciate that a lot. I like the beatboxers today, you guys are mind blowing. I can't even come up with words, right? But I mean, like we owe it to Dougie Fresh, and we owe it to Rozelle and to Buffy and to Al Jarreau and Bobby McFerrin and Louis Armstrong, to give something back. That's really it. You don't have to you do exactly what you're doing and just add just a little bit of appreciation for the foundation. These people gave us the letters for us to write words and poetry, for us to be able to show up powerfully like this now.
Cool. Thank you for that, Arabelle. That's all rings true. I want to touch on what Johnny was saying about getting beatbox mainstream. I think there's a few hurdles that need to be overcome, and one of them is what the music industry did to hip hop music in the first place. Is how they used it against the Black culture and glorified gangster rap and glorified women and using bitch and everything like that. So we have to be careful that beatboxing doesn't get caught up in this systemic how high it goes, and we don't get used and saturated like it's been used. And I think it's really important to put people that we know have a voice in places, laying those foundations as we rise, and make sure those pillars are there so we can hold on to them as we're rising. And yeah, I just wanted to echo that because I thought it needed to be said.
Zany, thank you so
Yeah,
much
that's
for bringing that up.
You know,
really important.
I'm so glad that you said
I don't
that.
know. I wanted to hop in. I'm sorry. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, brother.
Speaking chess.
Go ahead,
Well,
D.Cross.
go ahead, brother. It's all good.
What I wanted to say is important. Action, action, action. Recognizing what came before, but continue to do now. History and vision in the future. Looking at that. Being an inspiration. Giving as much to the young people now. That's important because they're going to be able to tell the stories that are going to come for generations and generations and generations, because we're not going to always be here. I always think that it's important. I mean, me being an educator and someone who works with young people on the regular. Matter of fact, after this, I got to hop into a Zoom call for a class. But it's important that those stories be told. You know, also piggybacking what you were saying, Chesney, the story has to be told. The narrative of the artists who are, create, I'm going to say it, the people of color and the Black artists, they have to be implicit in telling the story as well as everyone else. Everyone has to be able to tell the story and communicate that and all come together and share stories, because everybody's stories is not a monolithic story. Everybody's not going to have the same story. So it's important that the stories and points of views of the stories are in the forefront so that people can come to the table and bring different dishes to the table and everybody eat together. That's an important thing.
Chesney?
And also, nobody recognized that it's Buffy's birthday today. Buffy from the Fat Boys. So I just wanted to shout that out. Rest in peace. Rest in peace to Buff Love, because he was the first. He was the first. I mean, that inspired me to do what's called beatboxing. I had heard Doug's name, but Buff was the first that I physically saw. So I want to acknowledge him and make sure that his name still rings bells. I salute Buff. I salute Doug. Doug's my brother. I consider Doug a mentor. I salute Already Roxy. I salute DOA. I salute Rozelle. I salute my brother Kid Lucky. I salute my brother Chesney. I salute. There's so many to salute. I mean, my other brother Scratch from the Roots. I salute all of them because they all just dropped foundations to be able to get to the point where we're at now. Saluting Eminem. There's so many names that people don't know, but were instrumental in being able for us to get to where we are, so that human beatboxing is not just a Black art form. Because at one point, I know this, coming up in the 80s and the 90s, it was specifically or mostly Black art form, where anybody else, anybody else that was doing it, but like, nah, we're not going to do that, or that's a Black thing. So it's important that it's come around where it's global now, to be able to take the actions and use the sounds for revolution, for change. And revolution and change is not always just a physical thing. Revolution is in the mind. If we change how people are thinking, getting rid of the old ways of racism and systematic oppression and separating people, then we start thinking like, wow, we can truly change this world. Through sound, through power, and all of that.
Yeah.
Thank you, D.Cross.
I love you, D.Cross. Love you, brother. Yeah, just a couple of points in this that I think are important. Um, one is that acknowledging my humanity doesn't cost you anything. Acknowledging the humanity of others doesn't cost anything. This battle is going to cost. We're at a point where this is not going to be a painless thing. You know, this is going to require sacrifice. And I think that, you know, it's like when Occupy, you know, it was really easy to see how Occupy Wall Street was just going to be swept up off of that street, because it wasn't rooted at that moment. Like the angst and certainly, I mean, people were upset and angry, and we really wanted a revolution, right? When it came to actually paying homage to the people who've actually been on the ground fighting this, you know, as a full-time experience, as opposed to people who just got here, you know, and recognize that there are all these injustices. So I just say that to say, you know, welcome. Right? We need to say welcome to them and welcome them with open arms, but we should be under no illusion this is going to be an easy battle. Right? That, you know, this is going to be a very, very, very difficult battle. There have been lives lost in this. This battle has been going on for centuries. So, and the reason that I say that is that we have to understand strategy. You know, the strategy of, you know, it is a real war. You know, when I did a show that Mr. Harry Belafonte produced. I was working on that. I eventually passed it off to Chris, and then he did the show. But you know, Harry Belafonte would come and speak at the panel discussions, and he said, you know, he won every battle of the civil rights struggle. Every battle that we went into, we won, and then we lost the war. And he went on to say, we lost the war because when we had gotten these acts of legislations passed, when we had finally gotten to the point to where we were like, oh wow, we got somewhere, we did it. Right? We took a breath, we celebrated the fact that we did it. And in that one breath, opposition advanced. It's COINTELPRO, right, of the Black Panther struggle, hence the crack epidemic, hence the next point that I wanted to talk about, because Zany, I love what you brought up about the way in which hip hop was weaponized against Black people. You know, I'm many of you who are probably very educated in here know of the stuff that happened behind the scenes with the private prison industrial complex, you know, meeting with record executives, right? And actually offering record executive stock options in private prisons to promote a very specific narrative. Right? I've been sort of seeing that happening slowly with beatboxing for a while. Not necessarily on that scale. I've been like kind of like peeping back and watching like how the mainstream media through commercials and through all these different things, right, that they use, you know, kind of absorb into the beatboxing community and essentially attempt to co-opt it and make it a gimmick. You know what I mean? And take it away from what it actually is about, you know? For those of you who don't know, you should probably check out a wonderful artist named Zap Mama. You know, Zap Mama was one of the early women to rock the beatbox, right? And I think Rock Salute tours with her now, but she's all about like creating music that liberates people. We have to be clear that we're not just fighting an ideology, right? We're fighting actual physical enemies. There are actually people, and this is the thing that was very clear in the video with George Floyd. That police officer was an enemy. There are people who left the white supremacist movement to join the police departments. They have been having a strategy of how they were going to operate. Last point, or two last points. To get off the Wakanda tip, and what I mean by that is like there is no fucking Wakanda. Okay, it's a beautiful story. No, I'm sorry, it's a beautiful story, but the reality of the situation is that the Wakanda, right, is like they go into the Congo and they take all the mineral and resources, right, and then they assassinate those leaders, and there is like they have devastated, they raped and they've pillaged and they've destroyed. There is no, we don't have that. We can create that. Right? But we need to be in reality, understand the battle that we have to face, right? Two, the last one is that we have to take control of beatbox education. We cannot allow for beatbox education to be run by people who are non-beatboxers. Okay? It's really key and critically important, because we have to be able to we have to be able to enter these spaces and own our spaces, right? Because otherwise you end up in a system of exploitation. Right? So we have to be at the forefront of that. And I missed my brother Galush. One of the points that I wanted to make was like with regards to acapella and how acapella was you know, the way that acapella treated beatboxing, right? Because acapella was rooted in that educational system of the collegiate educational systems, right? Those educational systems did the exact same thing to hip hop. They excluded hip hop. Hip hop was like was nowhere near being accepted in education. Now there's a hip hop archives at Harvard. So yeah, we know what it is, you know, but we really have to strategize to make that change. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Chesney.
Thank you, Chesney. I'm going to use that as the launch pad to kind of go into the final straight, as it were, and just round off the conversation. But just before we do that, Airloom, you had something on the tip of your tongue.
Yes. I know we're talking about hip hop and like really Zany's point of like how they, you know, shifted hip hop to be weaponized against us is definitely true. And I want to be able to provide the audience members right now with the ability to tell the difference between real hip hop and what is not hip hop. So hip hop was created to support ideas of love, peace, unity, and having fun. If your music isn't talking about these things, it is not hip hop. Therefore, something like gangster rap is actually the antithesis of hip hop. That's actually promoting divisiveness. It's promoting division. It's promoting violence. It's promoting hate. So if you want to know if what you're about to cover is like a true hip hop song, you have to know that it's coming from a place of love, peace, unity, and having fun. They call hip hop hip hop. And you know what? I have to give, again, another shout out to King Luck, because he's the one who sat me down and educated me in this. He's the reason why I know Chesney. He's the reason why I know Johnny Buffalo. He's the reason why the Beatbox House is the Beatbox House, because he created this community for us to come together and explore these ideals and grow together. But yes, hip. To be hip to something is to be in the know. Hop. A hop is a move forward. So therefore, hip hop is the conscious movement forward. So if the music isn't consciously pushing the collective in a way that is pushing us forward towards a better future, then it cannot be considered hip hop. That is how you tell the difference between hip hop and rap. The only thing that needs to happen for something to be rap is rhythm and poetry. R-A-P, rap. That's all that needs to happen for it to be rap. They've been pushing this rap narrative instead of the true, powerful love language that is hip hop. And I feel like if that is one thing that you take from this talk today, that is the thing. Like we're here to promote love and unity, you know, and diversity. You know, that's what this is about. So don't fall for the hate messages, because that doesn't exist in hip hop. That's a different thing.
I couldn't agree
I
with
want
you
to
more.
add to that. I want to add to that, Arabelle. Yes, I agree with what you're saying, but it's so much more complex than that. Because there's the negative and there's the positive. So we have to get down to really looking at our humanity and the balance of it, you know, and being, you know, thinking about the beginnings of hip hop and where it came from and all of that. There was the negatives and there was the positives. And it got to a point where they said, look, we got to do some things different. I look at it like this: being someone who's experienced growing up hip hop and also being part of one of the people who actually helped create the human beatbox community in NYC. Taking the negative and the positive and turning them into something that we could use as positive. I don't think that we should ignore the negative or say that the negative is not real hip hop. It becomes good hip hop, bad hip hop, it's hip hop, but whether it elevates you, that's the core of everything. So I don't think we should not recognize what is the negative, because the negative has to be changed. Because what happens when we I'm speed it up, but when we romanticize, like, okay, this is the ideal, and we act like the negative is not there, it doesn't bring the balance that we need. So one of the things that we can all do from our voice, learn from the negative and the positive, and push the positive so that there's a better balance and see things for what it is. Tagging on from what Chesney was saying about Wakanda. That's real talk. If you see that the street that you're on is torn down and you say, nah, this Wakanda, you're not recognizing what's real. Then you're saying, okay, how can I take this, flip this, make this better? And that's what we're all here for, to be able to make the world better than what we do. Wow.
Thank you. Johnny?
Yeah, I just want just to piggyback a little bit off of these ideas. I mentioned this before. One of the first organizations that I was a part of in New York was the Hip Hop Re-Education Project. The name itself is about the fact that the true meaning of hip hop. Now there is the good and the bad side, but let's Arabelle saying that when it started, it was peace, love, unity, and having fun, right? And that was, again, because that needed to happen. Otherwise, there would be violence, and it was just a way to build a culture and not have the violence happen. So, basically, oh my God, I'm losing my train of thought right now. No. So the true meaning of hip hop. I got it. So true meaning of hip hop: peace, love, unity. And the Hip Hop Re-Education Project is something that was sort of about really spreading that message, because that was almost taken away from it, right? Like if you were to go out now and ask 10 randos in the street, what is hip hop? 9 out of 10 are going to say the negative aspects of it. And that's what has gotten the narrative. That's what most people recognize hip hop as. Now, but to even take a step back from that, something that I learned through my experience is hip hop is not a genre of music. Hip hop isn't rap music. It's not hip hop music. It is, but hip hop is bigger than that. It's a culture. Like we practice hip hop culture as beatboxers. Beatboxing is part of hip hop culture. So is rap. So is, there's the elements, right? And I'm sure most of us know this, but there might be some who don't, or just who even using the term, hip hop music is like, that's partially true, but it's really, there's more to it. And it's this culture that was built around peace, love, unity, and respect. And I feel like that true meaning that it came from is like, if that message was spread across the world, we'd be living in a much better place, right? Like who doesn't? Peace, love, unity, and respect is much needed. And I feel like
sorry.
No, I
I'm
just
just
feel like
saying, I think like out of all of the elements in beatboxing, those ideals are actually very prevalent. Like I'm actually very proud to be a part of this community where I actually see and feel that a lot of the time. So I just wanted to like shout out to beatbox community because like I may be a little salty, but like in all truth, I love you.
Well, we're gonna start rounding off the conversation now. We could literally be here all night talking about this really inspiring and invigorating, and hopefully everyone in the chat is taking notes and absorbing it into their souls and being able to manifest it in their art forms and their work in their careers. Just to close this conversation off, I'm going to ask each of you to say what it is that inspires you about the future, given the conversation we've had over the last kind of hour and a half or two. What are your hopes for the future for the beatbox community after this conversation? Chesney, I'm going to ask you to start, if that's okay.
Sure, I'd be honored to. I guess the thing that makes me, I'm cautiously optimistic. You know, I'm I think this can be a real moment for change, a transformation. I feel like, I have some trust issues, having been in these situations before. We really need to see movement and actions. So I'm hopeful. The reason that I'm hopeful about it is because I'm seeing so many different communities, this conversation and dialogue. That's what makes me hope for change. I like hope. That's what makes me feel like it's an actual real opportunity, as we talked about before we got on here. The thing that I would really want to come out of this is for people to really kind of understand that the core of the art form is a spiritual gift, right? and that in order to be able to elevate it and move forward, that it's not about showing the world what you can do, but rather about showing what you can give to uplift other people. Right? And if you do that, and then the universe then gives to you, then you really are in the core of what this is about, right? In terms of this ancient craft. That's what I would hope, is that people would really begin to redefine for themselves what beatboxing is and stop putting themselves inside of a narrow idea.
Thank you very much, Chesney. Johnny, over to you.
Okay, well, I am, again, kind of like hesitantly hopeful because right now we are experiencing something that's never, it's a very unique experience, but I haven't experienced this in my lifetime, right? We got things happening around the world, and I think it's extremely important right now, kind of to touch upon what Chesney was saying, to move forward correctly in a way that will build lasting change, and not like, I am terrified that in a month from now and 2 months from now, this is going to be out of the news cycle, and there's going to be people who are starting to lose interest, and I fear for that, and I hope that a lot of that comes down to just the dedication to the movement. And I think that as beatboxers, again, we have such a powerful platform that it would be such an amazing dream and hope. And I believe that this can happen. We're going to do this. What do you mean hope? This is going to happen. I'm speaking this into existence. We could lead a charge in our own community to address this in the correct way and to amplify the voices that have been silenced. And like the whole idea behind the racist history in America and the silencing of Black voices is like, if we as an art form can do this right now, we can be a fucking example for the world on how to deal with this issue outside of hip hop art form. Like, let's, I really think that we are in a really amazingly powerful position, and you know, it's going to be, I think it's going to be really something that I make sure everybody realizes myself. This has been going on for hundreds of years, and it's gonna be a long battle, but it's just really amazing to see. I feel like it's getting attention now. So I think it's just up to us all individually to think about the roles that we can play. This is something that is really big, and everybody has a unique talent, every communities, and we all have a way that we can contribute. So it's up to us to really search for that and like put some real conscious effort into educating ourselves and making this world a better.
Thank you, Johnny. MC Zany.
Yeah, just to echo what everyone's been saying, I'm optimistic as well. And the reason why I'm optimistic is when you empower somebody, you're giving them. I said it before already, but that person could be the next leader. You know, you might give them the confidence to become that next leader. And revolution starts with one. You know, and all we can do is raise the conscious vibration of everyone, raise everyone's awareness. And if you can just get that through to that one person, you're already part of the solution. You know, you're elevating people, and once you elevate people, it's like it's a ripple effect. You know, and again, I'm going to say, coming back to that critical mass, there's the tipping point, and that wave will continue. And I think it's up to us to keep the momentum and keep these conversations happening, and not let people be desensitized to all the issues that are happening. And once you have constructive conversations like this, even if you're in a room with people that don't agree with you, I think that's the next step, is to have these discussions with people that have opposing views. And once you can sit in a room and maintain your calm and your composure, that's when real change can happen, because it's not chalk and cheese. It's like, I'm this, I'm that, how do we get it together, you know? And I think that's what I'm optimistic about.
Nice one. Thank you very much. Heirloom, over to you.
Awesome. Thank you. I hope that out of this conversation, some amazing, powerful influencers will realize the true power of their voice and speak up. Not only for the injustices that are happening in America, but I know that like it start with us. Maybe they'll like it, and maybe they'll like keep going. And I hope that like by speaking out and being present in the way that I do, and experiencing all of this like discomfort, that I fill this space for the next person, the next Black girl that wants to come through, or the next girl or Black person that might want to come through. Maybe they don't feel so alone, or maybe they don't feel so excluded. And I feel that, you know, sharing my story, I hope I brought your awareness to, you know, how you may be, you know, perpetuating a community that isn't welcoming for women or people of color. I hope that, you know, that changes. I think it will, because I mean, like, I have to say, I've met a lot of beatboxers at that point, and experiences like that are very rare, but they are very impactful. But I am really hopeful that we continue to have this conversation and create together, and show people that, you know, we are very, very different, but we know how to celebrate them. You know, I want beatboxing. Like, I'm a Black person right now, like fighting for my life, but like I feel like I'm a beatboxer second, and like beatboxers are my family. You guys understand me in a way that, you know, my own family doesn't understand me, or my friends don't understand me. And I want us to be able to realize that we have that very important similarity, and our differences are still beautiful and can be acknowledged in a peaceful, beautiful way. We can celebrate everyone. But I really hope that you guys like make a video and donate, and use your voice to amplify, you know, the issues that are currently at hand, because it's extremely important. Thank you.
Absolutely. Action. That's the key. Scratchy.
Yeah. So, so a lot of things have been said. I think we're going to the right directions. Every artist in this craft is different, has its own origin, its own conflicts frustrations. The voice is a way to express um, these frustrations, all this love through the art, but as well the way you connect with the other artists who are also in contact with other circles is also another point that we can use. And it's funny, I've been told here, for example, in France, that whatever happens in the US is not connected to what happens in France. Totally wrong, because we have the same common history of slavery. We have like the whole western coast of France is connected to that history. There's the vibrations, the inheritance is in the DNA. Like the vibrations are here. We can't deny this. And once people will realize this through knowledge, through books, through I don't know. It just takes like sharing some books, some documentaries, because you can't talk about an issue if you have no idea what is the root of this issue. And this is why I was saying, like, it's a time, even if you don't know how to use your voice, it's okay. There are people around you who know better. You can exchange. It's a time to learn and do better. We will do better because together we're strong. And I have a lot of hope and faith in the community that we are in, because it's already very diverse, but we will move forward because we're already trying to integrate more women. We're trying to integrate trans people. We're trying to integrate a lot of different people from different horizons. So we have a chance, and we're going to be detrimental into this development forward using the art.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Beautifully put, Scratchy. And last but definitely not least, D.Cross.
Unmute yourself, D, in case you didn't know. You're on mute.
So
You with us, D?
I
Yeah.
am sometimes guarded, but I am optimistic, because sometimes you have to see the ugly before things can truly get beautiful. And what's beautiful is the way that people are having these dialogues and having this discussion, like, of what's going on. So it's like, it's up to the artist to really say, you know what, I'm going to take my gift to be able to uplift so that they can shift the world as we see it, the world as it becomes, and be able to also drop the seeds to the youngsters, to the little ones, so that they can grow, so that they can flow, so that they can elevate and eliminate the hate. So that's just how I want to say it, and thank everybody here for being the vessels of change that we are seeing, not even want to see, but are seeing. Each and every one of you are so important to elevating the vibration of the globe right now. Salute.
Beautifully put and beautifully rounded off. Thank you. And also just give a shout out once again to Galush, who left a little bit early, but no less filled us with so much knowledge and so much wisdom. So this is BoxCon Global. Thank you so much. I just wanted to round this off by I've been jotting down some action points, because I think this is an important part, the important outcome of this conversation. This is by no means comprehensive, but we talked a lot about storytelling and the importance of multiple strands of stories. And we talked about the importance of education and a pedagogical approach, particularly in the a cappella scene, and teaching that community. We talked about the role of the battle and the role of the art form beyond the battle, in having a part to play. We talked about representation organizationally, so promoters. We talked about workshops, representation in events, on stage, and so on. We talked about the involvement of other hip hop art forms to broaden the narrative, resisting the systemic music industry, history and vision. And certainly the point that stuck out with me the most was universal language. What the fuck are you actually saying? If beatbox is a universal language, what the fuck are you saying? I'd also mention a great point that Airloom mentioned, which might be the start of something right here, which is choose a black artist, remix them, raise money for Black Lives Matter. There is a donation link that will be popping up in the chat for Black Lives Matter. But beyond that, take it into your own hands. You have the power, you have the voice, you have an influence that other people would dream of. So use that. And if you start that with your competition and sharing knowledge through who can get the most money raised or who can rack up the most views by celebrating the history and the culture of this art form, do that. Thank you once again to all of our guests: Airloom, MC Zany, Johnny Buffalo, Galush, Scratchy, Chesney Snow, D.Cross. Thank you to Yason for making this possible. Thank you to Hutzman. Thank you to everybody who's been tuning into the chat. I hope you found it as powerful and resonant as I have. My name has been Dan Su. This has been BoxCon Global. We're back, I think, on the 24th of June, and we're exploring gender in beatboxing. No less an important conversation to be had. So once again, BoxCon Global, put your ones up in the chat if you've taken a morsel of knowledge. Make sure
Thank you.
Make sure that this conversation is actioned, is the final thought that I'll leave you with. Thank you. BoxCon Global.
Respect.
Peace.
Beatboxing.